Hello and welcome back, subscribers and new viewers, to another Sunday speed paint and a fairly important video. Despite it just being a fun Mermay drawing for me of one of my original characters in an even further alternate universe than they already are, considering they are an alternate universe sans part of my reincarnated series, I've made a bunch of sketches of mermaid skeletons or mer skeletons, and a fair few of them were really nice sketches. They weren't anything fancy to behold because of the way that I do my digital art, but they were concepts that I had gotten down. I made this particular one, and it looks really rough, like sandpaper. However, I wanted to fix that. Something that I've been learning with my artwork is the consistency and lack thereof some sort of consistencies with my channel when it comes to the content that I have been producing. And when you come to my channel, I'm not 100% sure exactly what first comes to mind for you. For me, it's a wide range of original content with my characters. I have over 200 OCs. That can be a lot, so the consistency that I want to keep from here forward is generally recognizable characters. Of course, my channel mascot is the main one, Stencil Fox. The one that you will see all the time, be it in the humanoid or even in the furry form, but will always be a part of it. The Void also being an extension of this. Other characters, for recognizable sakes, will be shoved into stories. As I've mentioned in a previous video, such as my reincarnated series, The Dawn of Gales, they'll all be put into categories so it's easier to keep tabs of, especially for playlists for your viewing pleasure. And for the entertainment's sake, and also for the viewers who are either just watching or just listening or both, to have something to return to. Underestimating my skills and abilities and everything that I've learned kind of feels like looking at a botched quilt, basically thrown together fabrics of everything, but each and every single one of those is a memory that has importance, something from a specific event. If any of you understand what I'm referring to, it's kind of like when you look at an old drawing, you know exactly where it's from, you remember what you were doing when you had drawn it. For me, I get that a lot with my illustrations. I can look back at just about any illustration that I have ever made and know roughly what was happening at that time. Good or bad, the memories are locked into it. Sometimes it could be a familiar sight or smell, even for some people, when you pick up an old book and you know exactly where it's been, and it brings back that smell of childhood innocence where you didn't have to worry about more than if it was going to be raining outside and if you could go outside in the rain the next day. Things like that. The whimsy and original fantasy stuff that I had been hooked on from others is also kind of an additional thing to it, where what I learned was all self-taught. Pretty much after I had finished all of the high school learnings here and there, I wanted to progress further with my art than what I was taught, which was basically just use a grid method and copy it line for line, use tools that weren't adequate to the original source. For example, using cheap acrylics to try and do what masters would do with oil paints centuries ago. I'm talking like really old. Various artists that it just wasn't the same. Using those and also trying to then tell us to not only mimic it detail for detail so we could learn something, but then to use it for our own studies so that we could expand on it and create our own art style and techniques was really difficult for me to process, especially as a visual person and someone who learns hands-on. Trying to do something in my own way and branching it off from what I had learned was really hard. It was just a mimicry, and it felt like that for so long. I had gone from making nothing but anime, Sonic, and other recopies of things to trying to make my own OCs, and any fan art that I made for years has still been a struggle for me to make it in my own recognizable style. When it came to my sketchbooks, those were the worst. I would always make something and it would look horrendous. It would look sloppy and I'd forget that that's what it was for. Just loose ideas that if I actually didn't put down any of those sketches, I wouldn't have those to share with you all. That's why I have it. It's important for me. And bringing characters and stories to life through the art, the whimsy that it brings to me, drawing these characters such as Impact in an alternate universe even further than the one that I came up with, just adds more ideas to my brain, even if it's just a one-off illustration or if it becomes something more. I genuinely wouldn't have some of my characters if not for one-off ideas that have expanded into further stories. Angel, my half-demon and angel character, was originally going to be another persona, or demon angel sona for me, that was a vent character that turned into something entirely like expanded universe and story. This has happened with multiple of my characters and is how I ended up coming up with a bunch of characters. And character designs that I was initially making for Adopts ended up sticking, and I grew attachments to them, thinking of tons of stories, and it also helped when I would share with other friends who had characters and would create lore and stories. My roommate and I, my best friend pretty much at the time when I was in America, she and I would create tons of stories, tons of characters and everything. It was for fun and it helped me with improvement, coming up with tons of things that turned from inspiration to motivation, which was a big difference for me, going from a concept to sketch to the idea, going to a final illustration and planning everything with the composition and the amount of time it would take for it. but it was really difficult for me, especially with digital art and backgrounds, making sure that the techniques that I was using were consistent with each and every single illustration. I would make really choppy, sloppy, sort of cel-shaded, if I could even call that, shadows. Pretty much just a dark blue on the bottom and usually yellow with like a lighter color dodge kind of for the lighting. I never really kind of focused on color theory for anything. I was just winging it based on what I had learned from all those tutorials that I had seen, and they kind of just sandwiched together. Eventually, I just kind of went off and did a whole bunch of studies and practice offline. Nothing that I really shared for anything or anyone, really. Haven't had a chance to go over all of it in detail, but I have a notebook where I keep all of my notes. I pretty much just wrote down everything that I could from every creator that I could think of and my own lessons that I learned, and kind of put it all together to see what I actually knew. Especially when I look back at some of my old artwork in my old portfolios, I have folders on my phone. I label the main folder with each year, so that way I have it separated. Initially, when I would create something, I knew exactly when I would make it. Usually the New Year's artwork was obvious, the holiday artwork especially, but original characters and fan artwork and other things were pretty scarce for a short period of time. And then I just had nothing but character design, which was great for improving on some of my proportions and anatomy, which I had a really hard time when communicating this with others when somebody would say that it didn't look proportionate, and I would think they meant towards realistic perspectives. This does not apply when it comes to the fantasy characters, because I used to be really nitpicky. If somebody said that my characters looked like they had noodle arms from Adventure Time, I took it very seriously, and I would kind of go hard in the opposite direction, trying to do more realistic proportions when people would point out stuff like the whole a certain number of heads tall for characters. For example, I think it's a standard for either 8.5, 9.5 for superheroes, or 7.5 for a standard human or something, 4.5 for kids. Basically just the head equals like one for the upper body, one for the middle, the bottom, and then half for the feet. That always frustrated me because I didn't understand that ear proportions, anatomy, and all of these things can be specific to your own. They don't have to follow every other rule that's come before you. The rules are there just as a base guideline, kind of like baking. Once you've finished making your cake layers and you've added your base glue frosting, so to speak, for your artwork of things, you can add as much detail as you want. You can add fruit to it in essence. You can add sugar sprinkles. Basically, that's how it was for me with artwork, which was the rendering process, basically all the decorative stuff that I could do. The implied textures and even made up ones was something that I had a hard time kind of figuring out, especially with digital, because textures for traditional was technically easy when it came to using different tools to make that. You could have actual texture with traditional, but with digital, especially coming up with the depth of it, the perspective, and where your eye follows, that was something that was really hard for me to understand, especially when it came to foreshortening and everything looked really wonky and funky. Trying to add this with colors and shading layers and everything was even more difficult as time went on, as I was trying to make really nice illustrations of varying degrees of simple to really highly detailed and rendered. Being my own harshest critic was something that was also really difficult. There were some things that I had made for beneficial changes, priorities that needed to be set in order for me to actually show what I was doing. I was reluctant to actually make certain effort changes and actually do something to completion. Doing something that was self-indulgent and for fun sometimes kind of conflicted with when I knew I had to get something done, and it turned from something that was enjoyable to something that was stressful. Sitting down to record, getting anxious, and reading over my lines and scripts and stuff with my dyslexic reading skills, where I would read something backwards or over and over again by accident, and looking at the page and my eyes doing what some people kind of consider your eyes going cross-eyed. It happened so often that I would end up fumbling over my words and losing that confidence when I was ready for that video. By the end of it, my energy drops and drains just from doing a video that was initially for fun and something that I emphasize here wanted to do to begin with. And it's very difficult, especially going from a small channel that only had maybe 10 people to over 1,000 subscribers. I want to be able to do more for you guys just as much as I am for me, for the channel overall. And I hope that this particular video, with everything that you see on screen here, compared to some of the old stuff, does actually show the improvement not just from my own eyes looking at this and seeing that yes, I have made improvements, but also for all of you, and to be able to do more of these types of illustrations and utilize my sketchbooks for drafting ideas that I normally would just keep in my head. I don't want things to fall into the void of nothingness. I want to share these with you, and I hope that you have enjoyed today's video, and let me know if you have any questions about the characters, the artwork, or anything from me directly. Thank you for watching. That's all the time that we have for today. Thank you so very much. If you have not already, don't forget to leave some likes and comments, and subscribe to join the Subscribblers squad. In the meantime, don't forget to check out some of my playlists, and if you would like any fan artwork featured at the end of the video in the Subscribblers gallery, tag me in it. I would love to see what you guys make, and if you'd like to support my works and see more, check out my card link below, especially for the patron exclusive rewards. £2 a month, the Fennec Fox tier gets you access to secret sketches and artwork early. The Arctic Foxes, for £5 a month, you get exclusive access to videos and webtoons pages early, and the Red Foxes have the opportunity to be featured as a background character or a commission instead, and your name read out at the end of the videos just like this. Thank you so much to Frankie Jr. 13 and Spot Draws. Stay possum, Subscribblers, and I'll see you real soon.